He expected diplomats, but Earth sent a silent warship that changed everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across the agricultural domes of Harmony Station as Director Elena Vasquez reviewed the weekly crop reports. The orbital farming complex housed 800,000 souls, mostly families who had volunteered to feed the growing human colonies, scattered across the Perseus Arm. Children attended schools in the rotating sections, while their parents tended to the vast hydroponic gardens that fed 12 worlds. Elena smiled as she watched her daughter Maria playing in the observation deck with other children, their laughter echoing through the transparent aluminum corridors. At 7 years old, Maria had never known anything but the peaceful rhythm of life among the stars. The closest thing to danger she'd experienced was a minor power fluctuation last month that had dimmed the lights for 30 minutes. Dr. James Chen was analyzing soil composition data in Laboratory 7 when his assistant called out urgently. "Doctor, we're picking up massive energy signatures approaching the station. Multiple contacts, moving fast." James frowned and moved to the sensor display. The readings made no sense. Dozens of ships, far larger than any human vessel, were decelerating from hyperspace directly toward Harmony Station. "Run a communications check," he ordered. "Maybe it's a supply convoy that's off schedule." In the station's command center, Captain Rosa Martinez was having her morning coffee when the proximity alarms began shrieking. Her duty officer, Lieutenant David Park, was staring at his screens in disbelief. "Captain, we have 47 unknown vessels on approach vector. They're not responding to our hails." Rosa set down her coffee and moved to the tactical display. The ships were massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest human freighters. Their design was unfamiliar, angular and predatory. "Keep trying to contact them," she ordered, "and send a priority message to Earth Command. We may need assistance." The approaching fleet belonged to the hegemony of Korvax, a militaristic alliance that had dominated their region of space for 3 millennia. Supreme Admiral Thrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the human station through the viewports. To him, it represented everything wrong with the galaxy's current state, soft species spreading their weakness across the stars. "Begin the demonstration," Admiral Thrax commanded coldly. His orders from the Korvax High Council were explicit. Destroy this human outpost to show Earth that expansion beyond their home system would not be tolerated. The galaxy had room for only the strong. Elena was reading bedtime stories to Maria when the first energy beam struck Harmony Station. The massive agricultural complex shuddered violently, throwing both mother and daughter to the floor. Through the viewport, Elena saw fire blooming across the station's outer hull as the alien weapons tore through protective barriers like paper. "Mommy, what's happening?" Maria cried, clutching her stuffed bear. Elena pulled her daughter close, fighting back terror. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we need to get to the emergency shelters." Dr. Chen watched in horror as the laboratory section exploded around him. Decades of research, carefully cultivated genetic libraries, and experimental crops that could have fed millions, all vaporized in seconds. He managed to reach an escape pod just as another energy blast collapsed the entire research wing. Captain Martinez tried desperately to coordinate the evacuation, but the alien attack was too swift and overwhelming. The station's defensive systems, designed to deflect asteroids and debris, were useless against military-grade weapons. "All sections, this is not a drill," she broadcast. "Evacuate immediately. Repeat, this is not a drill." Lieutenant Park's voice cracked as he reported the situation. "Captain, the agricultural domes are gone. The school section took a direct hit. We're losing life support in sectors 12 through 18. Rosa felt her heart break as she realized what those reports meant. Thousands of children, teachers, and families gone in an instant. The emergency shelters could hold maybe 50,000 people. 800,000 others had nowhere to run. Admiral Thrax watched the destruction with satisfaction. The human station was breaking apart exactly as planned. Its inhabitants were learning the price of defying Korvax authority. Within hours, this lesson would be transmitted to Earth, along with demands for humanity's withdrawal from all contested systems. Elena and Maria ran through collapsing corridors as explosions rocked the station around them. Other families streamed past in panic, some carrying wounded children, others searching desperately for missing loved ones. The emergency shelter was already overcrowded when they arrived, but Elena pushed through the crowd, determined to save her daughter. "There's no more room," someone screamed. Elena looked into Maria's frightened eyes and made a decision that would haunt her forever. She pressed her daughter into the arms of another mother who had space in the shelter. "Take care of her," she whispered. "I love you, Maria." The shelter doors sealed just as another massive explosion tore through the station's central core. Elena never made it inside. Commander Michael Torres was leading a patrol mission in the outer system when the distress signals reached his ship. The UES Defiance was a small escort vessel, never designed for combat against a major fleet. But when Torres saw the emergency broadcast from Harmony Station, he didn't hesitate. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "Set course for the station, maximum speed." His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, studied the sensor readings with growing dread. "Sir, we're detecting massive alien ships, at least 40 contacts, all significantly larger than us. We're outgunned by orders of magnitude." "Then we make every shot count," Torres replied grimly. "Those are our people dying over there." The Defiance arrived to find Harmony Station in its death throes. Entire sections had been vaporized, and the agricultural domes that had fed 12 worlds were scattered debris. The alien fleet was methodically destroying every structure, ensuring no survivors could escape to tell the story. Commander Torres opened fire with everything his small ship had. The Defiance's weapons were insignificant compared to the massive alien vessels, but he kept shooting, drawing their attention away from the few escape pods still launching from the dying station. "This is Torres to all Korvax vessels," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You're attacking civilians, farmers, teachers, children. Why are you doing this?" Admiral Thrax's response came back cold and emotionless. "Your species has expanded beyond acceptable limits. This demonstration shows the consequences of defying Korvax authority. Withdraw from all systems beyond your homeworld, or more of your colonies will suffer the same fate." Torres watched helplessly as the last sections of Harmony Station exploded into fire and debris. 800,000 people, including his own sister and her family, were gone. The alien fleet departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving only wreckage and a handful of survivors in damaged escape pods. Dr. Chen floated in his escape pod, watching the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest agricultural achievement. His life's work was gone, along with genetic samples that could have revolutionized food production across human space. But the scientific loss paled beside the human cost. Among the survivors was 7-year-old Maria Vasquez, now an orphan, clutching her stuffed bear. The other children in the escape pods cried for parents who would never answer. The few adults who had survived faced the terrible task of explaining why the galaxy had shown such cruelty to innocents. News of the Harmony Station massacre reached Earth 18 hours later. President David Chen, Dr. Chen's brother, sat in the Oval Office watching the horrific footage transmitted by Commander Torres. 800,000 dead, including 30,000 children. An entire agricultural complex that had fed 12 worlds, destroyed without warning or justification. They didn't even try to negotiate. Secretary of Defense Maria Santos reported grimly. No demands, no ultimatums. They just started killing. Admiral Jackson Stone, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, studied the tactical reports with cold fury. He was a veteran of the Mars campaign and the asteroid belt conflicts. But this was different. This was genocide against defenseless civilians. "Madam President," he said quietly, "the Korvax have made a fundamental error in judgment. They think destroying one station will frighten us into submission. They don't understand humans at all." President Chen stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Washington. Somewhere out there, in the refugee centers and military bases, the survivors of Harmony Station were telling their stories. The images of dead children and burning agricultural domes were spreading across every human world. "Admiral," she said without turning around, "I want every military commander on Earth in the Situation Room within 6 hours. The Korvax want to see what happens when they murder our families." They're about to find out. General Rebecca Hayes received the emergency summons at her Special Operations Base in Alaska. For 15 years, she had trained the best soldiers humanity could produce for missions other people called impossible. Her teams could infiltrate any target, anywhere in known space, and disappear without a trace. "Ma'am, priority orders from Washington," her aide reported. "You're needed immediately." Rebecca had been expecting this call since the news broke. The Korvax had just taught humanity a lesson about loss. Now it was time for them to learn about consequences. At the Pentagon, Dr. Alan Murphy was analyzing captured Korvax technology samples from previous diplomatic encounters. As Earth's leading expert on alien engineering, he understood their ships better than anyone else in human space. "Their vessels are powerful," he explained to his research team, "but they're built according to very rigid design principles. Everything is centralized, hierarchical. If we can disrupt their command structure, the entire fleet becomes vulnerable." His assistant, engineer Lisa Park, highlighted critical system nodes on the holographic display. "Doctor, look at these power distribution patterns. If we can overload their main reactors, we could cause catastrophic system failures across their entire ship." Meanwhile, Colonel Ryan Weber was preparing his reconnaissance units at the lunar facility. His soldiers specialized in deep space infiltration and intelligence gathering. They could move through alien territory like ghosts, collecting information and preparing targets for destruction. "The Korvax think they're safe in their own space," he told his team. "They've never faced an enemy willing to take the war to their home systems. That's about to change." The emergency meeting in Washington brought together the finest military minds humanity had ever produced. General Hayes commanded Special Operations. Admiral Stone led the Space Navy. Colonel Weber ran reconnaissance. They all had one question: how do you make an entire alien empire pay for the murder of 800,000 innocents? "The Galactic Council has issued a formal condemnation," President Chen reported with bitter irony. "They're very concerned about the escalation of tensions and hope both sides can return to peaceful negotiations." Admiral Stone slammed his fist on the table. "Peaceful negotiations? They slaughtered children without warning, and the Council wants us to negotiate?" "The other species don't understand," the president continued. "They've been at peace so long, they've forgotten what real war looks like. They think a diplomatic protest will solve everything." General Hayes leaned forward. "What are our orders, Madam President?" David Chen looked around the room at the men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. They had tried diplomacy, trade, and peaceful coexistence. The Korvax had responded with genocide. "The hegemony of Korvax has declared war on humanity through their actions at Harmony Station. We're going to respond in kind, but we're not going to fight like other species fight. We're going to fight like humans." Dr. Murphy presented his research to the assembled commanders. The Korvax military relies on massive ships and overwhelming firepower. They expect their enemies to meet them in traditional fleet battles with equally large forces. "That's not how we're going to do this." He displayed detailed schematics of Korvax ship designs and military installations. Their entire command structure is rigidly hierarchical. Every ship, every base, every weapons platform takes orders from centralized command nodes. If we can sever those connections simultaneously, their forces become isolated and vulnerable. Engineer Park stepped forward with her stealth technology proposals. "We've developed new cloaking systems that can hide our ships from their sensors completely. Instead of building bigger fleets, we'll build invisible ones." Colonel Weber spread out intelligence maps of Korvax space. "My teams have identified their critical installations: command centers, supply depots, communication relays, fleet bases. We can hit them all at once before they know we're there." Admiral Stone studied the plans with growing excitement. This wasn't the kind of warfare the galaxy expected. Most alien species fought like ancient armies, lining up massive fleets and battling until one side surrendered. Humans had learned to fight with intelligence, precision, and ruthless efficiency. "How long before we're ready?" he asked. "Give us 8 months," General Hayes replied. "We'll need that time to modify our ships, train our people for deep space operations, and position our assets throughout Korvax territory." President Chen nodded. You have unlimited resources, funding, materials, personnel. The entire human sphere is behind this effort. News of Earth's military buildup spread quickly through human space. Every colony, every space station, every settlement wanted to help. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Factories worked around the clock producing new weapons and ships. The survivors from Harmony Station were given special roles in the planning. Commander Torres shared his tactical knowledge of the Korvax attack patterns. Dr. Chen provided intelligence on their agricultural systems and supply lines. 7-year-old Maria Vasquez, now in protective custody, became a symbol of human determination, a reminder of what the enemy had taken from them. 8 months later, Earth's new fleet was ready. The ships were smaller than traditional warships, but they were faster, smarter, and completely invisible to Korvax sensors. Each crew had been trained for one purpose: to make the Korvax pay for Harmony Station. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her new ship, the UES Retribution. Around her, hundreds of similar vessels prepared for the long journey to Korvax space. Each ship was named for someone who had died in the massacre. All ships report ready, Admiral Stone announced over the communications system. Remember, we are not conquerors. We are not invaders. We are justice itself, and we will not stop until every person responsible for Harmony Station faces the consequences of their actions. The human fleet departed from Earth in complete silence, invisible to any watching eyes. The Korvax hegemony had started this war with an act of genocide against farmers and children. They were about to learn that humanity would finish it. The human fleet reached the edge of Korvax space after 6 weeks of travel. Admiral Stone studied the star charts from his command ship. 18 Korvax fortress worlds protected their borders, each one heavily armed and supposedly impregnable. All ships maintain stealth mode, he ordered. Remember, we strike fast and disappear. Don't give them time to call for help. Colonel Weber and his reconnaissance teams had been inside Korvax territory for 3 weeks, moving like shadows through alien installations. They gathered intelligence, mapped defenses, and planted surprises that would activate when the main attack began. Weber crept through the corridors of Fortress Kadesh, his suit rendering him nearly invisible to Korvax sensors. The alien guards passed within meters without detecting him. He reached the main reactor control room and began installing Dr. Murphy's viral programs. Too easy, he whispered into his communicator. Their security is designed to stop conventional infiltration. They're not prepared for human methods. Sergeant Maria Santos was working in the power core of another fortress. Her mission was simple but deadly. Place explosive charges on critical systems throughout the facility. When activated, these devices would cause catastrophic failures that would tear the base apart from within. Charges placed, she reported quietly. This fortress will go dark in 60 seconds when we give the signal. Dr. Murphy's computer virus was ready for deployment. The sophisticated program would infiltrate Korvax networks and turn their automated systems against each other. It spread through their communications like a digital plague. Deploying the cyber weapon now, Dr. Murphy announced from his ship. Their command systems should start failing in 10 minutes. The Korvax had no idea death was coming for them. Commander Vorthak sat in his command center on Fortress Prime, reviewing routine patrol reports. His installation guarded the main hyperspace route into Korvax core territory. Nothing had ever threatened this position. Suddenly, alarms began screaming throughout the fortress. Vorthak leaped from his chair as his officers shouted panic reports. "Sir, our defensive weapons are targeting our own ships. The main reactor is overloading. We're losing communication with all outer sectors." Admiral Stone watched from space as 18 Korvax fortresses began destroying themselves simultaneously. Months of careful planning were paying off perfectly. "All attack ships, move in now," he commanded. Captain Rodriguez brought the UES Retribution out of stealth mode directly above Fortress Prime. Her ship's weapons were precise instruments of destruction, each shot calculated to cause maximum damage to military targets while avoiding civilian areas. The Korvax ships tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't lock onto targets they couldn't see. Human vessels appeared from nowhere, delivered devastating strikes, and vanished back into stealth before the aliens could respond. Commander Vorthak watched his fortress collapse around him. Half his weapons were offline, infected by the human virus. His ships were firing on each other because their targeting systems had been compromised. Enemy vessels materialized like ghosts struck with surgical precision and disappeared. "How are they doing this?" he screamed at his sensor officer. "I don't know, sir. Our detection systems show empty space, but the attacks are coming from everywhere." Sergeant Santos's explosives finished their work. Fortress Kadesh's main reactor went critical, sending a pillar of fire visible from the next star system. The explosion could be detected by sensors 50 light-years away. Within 4 hours, all 18 border fortresses were destroyed or abandoned. The Korvax defenders who survived fled in whatever ships still functioned, carrying tales of invisible enemies, who struck without warning and vanished like smoke. The human fleet regrouped at a safe distance. Not a single human ship had been lost. The Korvax' supposedly impregnable border defenses were gone. "Phase 1 complete," Admiral Stone announced. "Now we move deeper into their territory." News of the border attacks reached the Korvax homeworld 5 days later. High Command was in chaos. 18 military fortresses destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see or track. It was unprecedented. Supreme Admiral Thrax, who had led the attack on Harmony Station, studied the battle reports with growing unease. "These humans fight unlike anything we've encountered. How do we stop an enemy we can't locate?" "Deploy more ships," suggested General Corbin. "Overwhelming numbers have always worked before." But Admiral Thrax wasn't convinced. The humans weren't fighting like other species. They didn't line up massive fleets for traditional battles. They struck like apex predators, always from unexpected directions. Meanwhile, the human fleet was already moving toward its next targets. Dr. Murphy's virus had spread through Korvax communication networks, giving Colonel Weber access to their most classified military plans. "I have the locations of their main supply centers," he reported to Admiral Stone. "If we eliminate these facilities, their entire war machine will begin to collapse." General Hayes was preparing her special operations teams for even more dangerous missions. The border fortresses had been just the beginning. Now they would strike at the heart of Korvax military power. "Our next targets are their shipyards," she explained to her team leaders. "These facilities build and maintain their warships. Without them, the Korvax Navy becomes obsolete." Colonel Weber studied the intelligence data carefully. The primary construction facility is at Korvax Prime Station. It's protected by 5 battle fleets and considered absolutely secure. General Hayes smiled coldly. "That's what they said about the border fortresses." Engineer Park had been refining their stealth technology even further. "I can make our ships completely undetectable to their sensors. The Korvax are trying to adapt their detection methods, but we'll always stay ahead of them." The human fleet moved through Korvax space like an unstoppable force of nature. Every few days, another military installation would go silent. Supply convoys disappeared without explanation. Communication relays stopped functioning. The Korvax began to panic. Kror, their massive military machine, built to crush enemies through sheer firepower, was being dismantled piece by an enemy they couldn't even find to fight. Admiral Thrax received another report of destroyed facilities. "How many ships do the humans actually have?" he demanded. "Intelligence estimates perhaps 300 vessels, sir," his aide replied nervously. 300 ships are destroying our entire military infrastructure?" "Yes, sir, but we can't locate them to engage them in battle." Korvax High Command decided to recall ships from other sectors to protect their core worlds. But every time they concentrated forces in one area, the humans would attack somewhere completely different. Commander Torres, now recovered from his injuries at Harmony Station, had joined the fleet as a tactical advisor. He helped plan each attack, always remembering the burning agricultural domes and the children who had died for no reason. "The Korvax are learning to fear us," he told Admiral Stone. "Their commanders are making mistakes because they're terrified." "Good," the Admiral replied. "Fear makes enemies predictable, and predictable enemies are easy to defeat." The systematic destruction of Korvax military power continued relentlessly. Each victory brought the human fleet closer to their ultimate goal, making the aliens pay for every innocent life lost at Harmony Station. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime erupted in chaos as news from Korvax space reached the assembled delegates. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell sat at the human observation table, watching alien representatives argue with each other in barely controlled panic. "Impossible!" shouted the Zenthari delegate, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. "A few hundred ships cannot destroy an entire military network spanning 12 sectors." The Althraxian representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with nervous energy. "The reports must be exaggerated. The Korvax are simply making excuses for their strategic failures." But Ambassador Mitchell knew better. She had been receiving regular updates from Admiral Stone. The human fleet was performing exactly as planned, and the Korvax were crumbling faster than anyone had expected. Council Chairman Vex High, an ancient insectoid from the Terminus worlds, called for order with his clicking mandibles. "We are here to address the human military actions in Korvax territory. This violence must cease immediately." Sarah Mitchell stood slowly. Every alien eye in the chamber focused on her. She was a former Marine, chosen specifically for her ability to project strength in diplomatic settings. "Chairman Vex High," she said with perfect calm, "Earth did not initiate this conflict. The Korvax hegemony murdered 800,000 innocent civilians without warning, negotiation, or justification." "That incident is regrettable history," interrupted the Zenthari delegate. "We must focus on preventing further escalation of hostilities." Sarah's voice remained steady, but steel underlined every word. "Regrettable history? It happened 10 months ago. 800,000 farmers, teachers, engineers, and children were vaporized while eating breakfast, attending school, and tending crops that fed 12 human worlds." She activated a holographic display showing footage from Harmony Station. The alien delegates watched in uncomfortable silence as the agricultural complex exploded. Escape pods scattered like leaves, and children's playgrounds became fields of debris. "These are the people the Korvax murdered," Sarah continued. "They killed a 7-year-old girl's mother right in front of her. They destroyed genetic laboratories that could have fed billions. They turned schools into graveyards and called it a demonstration." Meanwhile, Admiral Stone was preparing the final phase of human operations. His fleet had penetrated deep into Korvax core territory, systematically destroying military targets with surgical precision. The aliens' attempts to track human ships had failed completely. "Intelligence reports that Korvax High Command is pulling back all forces to protect their home system," reported Colonel Weber. "They're abandoning their outer territories to concentrate everything around Korvax Prime." "Excellent," Admiral Stone replied. "When they withdraw their fleets, it leaves their industrial worlds defenseless." "General Hayes, are your teams ready for the next phase?" General Hayes nodded grimly. "We've located Admiral Thrax and his command staff, the same officers who ordered the Harmony Station massacre. They're consolidated in the military command complex on Korvax Prime." Dr. Murphy had been analyzing captured Korvax communications for weeks. "Their military leadership is completely demoralized," he reported. "They're issuing contradictory orders and blaming each other for the losses. Fear has broken their command structure more effectively than our weapons." "Fear does that," observed Commander Torres. "When you can't see your enemy coming, you start seeing threats everywhere. It's exactly what happened to us at Harmony Station. Except now they're the ones who can't sleep." The Korvax home system was now surrounded by their most powerful battle fleets. Admiral Thrax paced nervously in his command center, staring at sensor displays that showed nothing but empty space. "Where are they?" he muttered to himself. "We know the human ships are out there, but our sensors detect absolutely nothing." General Corvin was studying tactical reports with growing desperation. "Sir, we've lost contact with 23 more supply bases in the Outer Rim. The humans are systematically destroying our logistics network. How are they moving so fast through our territory?" "Maybe their ships are more advanced than our intelligence suggested," Thrax replied. "Or maybe there are more of them than we calculated." Neither Korvax officer understood the truth. Human ships weren't faster or more numerous than estimated. They were simply invisible and fought with tactics the aliens had never encountered in 3 millennia of warfare. Back at the Galactic Council, the emergency session was growing more intense. The Korvax ambassador had arrived to plead desperately for intervention. "The humans are conducting acts of terrorism," he declared with barely controlled panic. "They attack without warning and disappear like cowards. This violates every principle of civilized warfare." Sarah Mitchell's response was immediate and cutting. "The same tactics your forces used against Harmony Station. The only difference is that we target military installations, not agricultural stations full of children and mom." The Althraxian delegate attempted to restore diplomatic calm. "Surely there must be a peaceful resolution. The Korvax are prepared to offer substantial reparations for the Harmony Station incident." 50 billion credits, the Korvax ambassador announced desperately. "Plus territorial concessions in disputed border regions. We can negotiate terms that benefit both species." Sarah looked at him with eyes like ice. "How much is a child's life worth, Ambassador? Can you put a price on a murdered teacher? On a burned school? On 800,000 people who died screaming?" The chamber fell into absolute silence. Most alien species had never experienced total war. They had grown comfortable through centuries of peaceful negotiations and diplomatic compromises. The concept of warfare for justice rather than territory was foreign to them. Dr. Chen, the surviving brother of Harmony Station's chief scientist, was now serving as a technical advisor to the human fleet. His brother's research had been vaporized along with 30,000 children, and he wanted to help plan the final assault. "The orbital defense platforms around Korvax Prime have a critical vulnerability," he explained to the tactical team. "If we can cascade their power systems, the entire defensive network will collapse like dominoes." Engineer Park studied the technical specifications with growing excitement. "I can modify Dr. Murphy's virus to target their power grid specifically. It would take approximately 8 hours to propagate through their entire system." Admiral Stone listened to their presentation with cold satisfaction. "How long before we're ready for the final assault?" "Give us 2 weeks, Dr. Chen replied. "We need that time to customize the virus and position our ships for maximum effectiveness." The Galactic Council session ended without any resolution. The alien delegates returned to their home worlds, deeply shaken by what they had witnessed. Their comfortable assumptions about warfare and diplomacy were crumbling before their eyes. Chairman Vexai sent a classified message to his government. "The humans represent a paradigm shift in galactic power dynamics. Their military capabilities exceed our understanding, and their determination appears absolute. We must ensure we never become their enemies." Similar messages were transmitted across known space. Species that had once dismissed humans as primitive newcomers were now reconsidering their positions with growing alarm. Ambassador Mitchell returned to her quarters and composed her daily report to President Chen. "The Council is terrified. They're beginning to understand that their peaceful methods are meaningless when confronting genuine evil. The other species are starting to respect Earth's position, though it's born from fear rather than admiration." Colonel James Park, the President's military liaison, was coordinating final preparations for the assault on Korvax Prime. Every detail had been planned with meticulous precision. "We target military installations only," he reminded his staff firmly. "Command centers, weapons platforms, naval bases, government facilities. We want the Korvax leadership to surrender, not to become martyrs for their cause." The stage was set for the final confrontation. The Korvax hegemony had concentrated all remaining forces around their homeworld, believing that superior numbers would finally give them victory over the invisible human fleet. They were about to learn that in human warfare, numbers meant nothing compared to intelligence, determination, and the righteous fury of those seeking justice for murdered innocents. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Korvax home system like silent death incarnate. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, observing the massive alien armada that surrounded their homeworld. 400 Korvax warships waited in defensive formation, the largest military force ever assembled in their species' history. "Look at them," General Hayes said quietly, studying the tactical displays. "They still think numbers will save them from justice." Dr. Murphy was making final adjustments to the virus that would cripple the Korvax defense network. The orbital platforms are already infected with our preliminary programs. When I activate the main sequence, their own weapons will turn against them like antibodies attacking a disease. Colonel Weber and his infiltration teams had been inside the Korvax capital city for a week. They moved through underground maintenance tunnels like digital ghosts, placing tracking devices on key government officials and mapping every possible escape route. Target acquired, he whispered into his encrypted communicator. Admiral Thrax is in the military command complex. General Corbin is with him. Both officers who planned the Harmony Station massacre are in the same facility. Admiral Stone opened a communication channel that broadcast to every screen and speaker on Korvax Prime. His message reached millions of alien civilians who had never seen a human face before. This is Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force. We have come for justice. Surrender the officers responsible for the massacre at Harmony Station, and your people will be spared. Refuse and witness the consequences of murdering innocents. In the Korvax command center, Admiral Thrax stared at the communication screen with absolute terror. He had been dreading this moment for months, but seeing the human fleet finally arrive made his 3 hearts beat like war drums. "How many ships do they actually have?" he asked his sensor officer with a trembling voice. "Our scans detect approximately 60 vessels, sir. Much smaller than our defensive fleet." General Corbin forced a nervous laugh. 60 ships against 400? They must be completely insane. Do they think courage alone can overcome such odds? But Admiral Thrax wasn't laughing. He had studied every report from the border battles. Human ships could appear and disappear at will, striking like lightning and vanishing before retaliation was possible. "Send our response," he ordered reluctantly. "Tell them the Korvax hegemony does not negotiate with terrorists. They must leave our space immediately or face total annihilation." The Korvax government's reply came back within minutes, broadcast on all frequencies for the entire galaxy to hear. "We reject your demands unconditionally. The Harmony Station action was a legitimate military demonstration. Leave Korvax space now, or we will destroy your pathetic fleet as easily as we destroyed your agricultural station." Admiral Stone had expected this response. The Korvax had learned nothing from the systematic destruction of their military infrastructure. They still believed that firepower alone determined victory. "Very well," he said calmly. "Dr. Murphy, activate the virus. All ships, prepare for final assault operations." The virus spread through the Korvax defense network like wildfire consuming dry grass. Within minutes, the massive orbital platforms that protected their homeworld began turning their weapons against each other in a spectacular display of friendly fire. Explosions lit up the night sky as trillion-credit installations destroyed themselves in automated suicide. The defensive grid that had protected Korvax Prime for 1,000 years was tearing itself apart. "What's happening?" General Corbin screamed as emergency reports flooded in from across the planet. "Our defense grid is attacking itself. The orbital stations are firing on our own ships." The 400 Korvax warships tried to maintain formation, but chaos was spreading through their ranks like a plague. Their command systems were infected with human malware, causing ships to receive contradictory orders or lose communication entirely with their squadrons. Captain Rodriguez brought the UES Retribution out of stealth mode directly above the planet's primary military installation. Her ship's precision weapons struck the command center's communication arrays, severing the Korvax leadership from their fleet at the most critical moment. General Hayes coordinated simultaneous strikes on 15 key targets across the planet. Human ships materialized from empty space, destroyed their objectives with surgical accuracy, and vanished back into stealth mode before the defenders could even acquire targeting locks. Commander Torres, still carrying emotional scars from Harmony Station's destruction, led a squadron that targeted the Korvax fleet flagship. His weapons found their mark with devastating precision, and the massive ship exploded in a fireball visible from orbit. "That's for Maria's mother," he whispered, remembering the 7-year-old orphan who had lost everything. "That's for every child who died because of your hatred." The Korvax fleet was disintegrating before their eyes. Without central command coordination, individual ship captains began making desperate decisions. Some attempted to flee the system in panic. Others tried to ram human vessels they couldn't see or track. Most simply drifted helplessly as their systems failed around them. Admiral Thrax watched his military career end in complete disaster. Every screen in the command center displayed the same horrifying reality. Human victory achieved through methods he couldn't comprehend. His supposedly invincible fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy force a fraction of its size. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet," his communications officer reported with a shaking voice. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen, his face calm but implacable as death itself. Behind him, the destruction of the Korvax fleet continued with mechanical precision. "Admiral Thrax," Stone said with quiet authority, "your fleet is finished. Your defenses are destroyed. Your people are witnessing the price of murdering innocents. You have one final opportunity to surrender and face justice, or we will continue this demonstration until nothing remains of your military power." Admiral Thrax's face contorted with rage and desperation. "You cannot defeat the entire Korvax hegemony with 60 ships. We have reserves across the galaxy. Do you?" Admiral Stone's voice carried a note of cold amusement. "Colonel Weber, please provide the Admiral with our current intelligence." Colonel Weber's voice came through the communication channel with professional precision. "Admiral Thrax, in the past 8 months, human forces have destroyed 847 Korvax military installations across 12 sectors. Your shipyards at Kepler Station are gone. Your ammunition depots in the Outer Rim are space dust. Your communication networks have been compromised beyond repair. You have no reserves left to call upon." The color drained from Thrax's face as the scope of human operations became clear. While he had been concentrating on protecting the home system, Earth's forces had systematically dismantled his entire military infrastructure across known space. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence showed only 300 human ships total." "Your intelligence was correct," Admiral Stone replied. "We accomplished all of this with fewer than 300 vessels. Perhaps you're beginning to understand the difference between Korvax warfare and human warfare." General Corvin stepped forward desperately. "What do you want from us? Reparations? Territory? Trade concessions?" Commander Torres's voice cut through the communication with ice-cold clarity. "We want the officers who ordered the massacre of 800,000 innocent people to face justice. We want Admiral Thrax and his command staff to surrender themselves for trial." "Never," Thrax snarled. "I am a supreme admiral of the Korvax hegemony. I do not surrender to inferior species." Admiral Stone's expression didn't change, but his voice carried the weight of absolute finality. "Then you have chosen the path of total defeat. All ships commence final assault operations." The remaining human fleet emerged from stealth mode simultaneously around Korvax Prime. 60 ships became visible all at once, positioned at optimal attack vectors around the planet. Each vessel locked onto specific military targets with devastating precision. Dr. Chen's voice came over the tactical channel. "Virus deployment is complete. All planetary defense systems are now under our control. Their own weapons are targeting their command centers." The surface of Korvax Prime erupted in explosions as the planet's defensive installations turned against their creators. Military bases that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble by their own automated systems. Captain Rodriguez led her squadron in a precision strike against the government complex. "This is for Elena Vasquez and every parent who died trying to save their children," she announced as her weapons found their targets. The massive government building, symbol of Korvax authority for 3 millennia, collapsed in a controlled demolition that left nearby civilian structures completely untouched. Human precision was terrifying in its surgical accuracy. General Hayes coordinated the final assault on the military command center, where Admiral Thrax was trapped. "Target the communications arrays, the weapon systems, and all escape routes. I want them isolated but alive." Explosions rocked the command center as human weapons systematically destroyed every piece of military equipment in the facility. Emergency power failed. Backup communications went silent. Automated defenses shut down. Within minutes, the most secure installation on Korvax Prime had been reduced to a powerless bunker. So Admiral Thrax stood in the darkened command center, watching his career and his civilization crumble around him. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the faces of his officers, all of them realizing that their 3,000-year military dominance was ending tonight. "Sir," his communications officer reported with a breaking voice, "we're receiving a final transmission from the human fleet." Admiral Stone's face appeared on the emergency screen, illuminated by the fires burning across Korvax Prime. "Admiral Thrax, your military power is broken. Your fleets are destroyed. Your defenses are rubble. You have one last choice. Surrender now and face justice for your crimes, or we will demonstrate what happens when humans stop showing restraint." "Restraint?" Thrax laughed bitterly. "You call this restraint? We've targeted only military installations," Stone replied coldly. "Your civilian population remains unharmed. Your cities are intact. Your schools are still standing. Compare that to what you did at Harmony Station." The truth hit Admiral Thrax like a physical blow. Despite having the power to level entire cities, the humans had carefully avoided civilian casualties. They could have murdered millions in revenge for Harmony Station, but they had chosen precision over brutality. Colonel Weber's voice came through his earpiece. "Admiral Stone, we have visual confirmation of Admiral Thrax and General Corvin in the command center. Both targets are isolated and ready for extraction." "Very good, Colonel. General Hayes, are your teams in position?" General Hayes checked her tactical display. "Affirmative. We can breach the facility and extract the targets within 15 minutes. No Korvax casualties required." Admiral Stone opened one final communication channel to Admiral Thrax. "You have 30 seconds to decide, Admiral. Surrender voluntarily and face trial for your crimes, or we will come in and take you by force. Either way, you will answer for the 800,000 innocents you murdered." Admiral Thrax looked around the ruined command center at his terrified officers. General Corvin was sobbing quietly in the corner. His communications staff sat in stunned silence. The most powerful military force in their region of space had been destroyed in a single night by an enemy they couldn't even see coming. "If I surrender," he asked quietly, "what happens to my people?" "Your government will face reform under Galactic Council's supervision," Admiral Stone replied. "Your military will be disbanded and rebuilt with humanitarian oversight. Your species will learn to coexist peacefully with others, or you will be quarantined to your home system permanently." Thrax's voice cracked as he asked his final question. "And if I refuse, then we continue this demonstration until your entire civilization understands the price of murdering children." The silence stretched for an eternity. Outside, fires burned across the military districts of Korvax Prime. In space, the wreckage of 400 warships drifted through the void like a graveyard of Imperial ambition. Finally, Admiral Thrax activated his communicator with trembling hands. "This is Supreme Admiral Thrax of the Korvax Hegemony. I surrender myself and my command staff to human forces for trial." General Hayes received the surrender notification and smiled grimly. "Copy that, Admiral. We're coming in." Human soldiers materialized throughout the command center like armored ghosts. Their stealth suits made them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Within minutes, Admiral Thrax and his senior officers were in custody without a single shot being fired. As the humans led him away in restraints, Admiral Thrax turned to Admiral Stone. "How?" he asked desperately. "How did your small fleet accomplish all of this?" Admiral Stone looked at the defeated alien commander with something approaching pity. "You never understood what you were fighting, Admiral. You thought you were at war with another military force. You were wrong. You were at war with human mothers and fathers seeking justice for their murdered children. That's a war you could never win." The news of Korvac's surrender spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed human military capabilities, was forced into emergency session to address the implications of what had just occurred. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell stood before the assembled delegates, representing a species that had just achieved the impossible. "Earth's military objectives have been accomplished," she announced calmly. "The officers responsible for the Harmony Station massacre are in custody and will face trial for crimes against humanity." Chairman Vexhide clicked his mandibles nervously. "The Council must express concern about the precedent this sets." Military force should not be the primary method of resolving interspecies disputes. Sarah's response was immediate and uncompromising. Then perhaps the Council should have acted when the Korvax committed genocide against 800,000 innocent civilians. Earth asked for justice through diplomatic channels and was ignored. We were forced to seek justice through our own methods. The Zenthari delegate flickered with agitation. The destruction of Korvax military power will destabilize this entire region of space. Good, Sarah replied coldly. The Korvax use that military power to murder children and farmers. The galaxy is safer with their war machine destroyed. On Earth, President Chen addressed the human population from the Oval Office. 800,000 of our people died at Harmony Station because they chose to feed the galaxy rather than fear it. Tonight, those responsible for their murders are in custody. Justice has been served. The survivors of Harmony Station watched the broadcast with tears of joy and grief. Dr. Chen, who had lost his brother in his life's work, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Commander Torres thought of his sister's family and finally allowed himself to grieve properly. 7-year-old Maria Vasquez, now 8 and living with a foster family on Mars, watched the news with her stuffed bear clutched tightly. She was too young to understand politics or military strategy, but she understood that the bad people who killed her mother were finally caught. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Korvax Prime recede into the distance. His fleet was already heading home, their mission accomplished with surgical precision. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving messages from across human space. Every colony wants to celebrate our victory." Stone nodded quietly. "Signal the fleet. We're not returning as conquerors. We're returning as guardians who did what was necessary to protect innocent life." The human fleet's journey home took 6 weeks. At every human world they passed, crowds gathered to honor the vessels that had brought justice for Harmony Station. Children held signs with the names of the 800,000 dead. Parents wept for the families that had been avenged. But the greatest welcome awaited them at Earth itself. President Chen stood on the observation deck of Luna Station as the fleet approached Earth orbit. The entire human sphere had been united by grief and now celebrated together in justice achieved. Admiral Stone's final report was brief and precise. Mission accomplished. The Korvax hegemony military has been neutralized. Officers responsible for the Harmony Station massacre are in custody. Human colonies are secure. No human lives were lost in the operation. The trial of Admiral Thrax and his co-conspirators began 3 months later on Luna Station, with representatives from across the galaxy observing the proceedings. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed recordings of the Korvax High Command ordering the destruction of a civilian target, tactical analyses showing the deliberate targeting of schools and agricultural areas, and testimony from the handful of Harmony Station survivors. When the verdict was announced, guilty of genocide and crimes against sentient life, the Galactic Council finally understood that humanity had permanently altered the balance of power in known space. Other species began reviewing their own policies toward human colonies with new appreciation for Earth's capabilities. The casual dismissal of humanity as a minor power was replaced by careful respect for a species that had demonstrated the ability to project overwhelming force across interstellar distances. Years later, military academies across the galaxy would study the human campaign against the Korvax as a masterpiece of strategic planning and tactical execution. It became known as the Ghost War, a conflict where one side remained invisible until the moment of victory. But on Earth, it was remembered simply as justice for Harmony Station. 800,000 innocent people had been murdered for the crime of feeding the galaxy. Their killers had faced the consequences of that choice. The children's playground that had been built on the site of Harmony Station's wreckage bore a simple inscription, "In memory of those who died feeding the stars, and in honor of those who made their killers pay." Maria Vasquez visited that memorial every year on the anniversary of her mother's death. By the time she reached adulthood, she had decided to join the Earth Defense Force herself, following in the footsteps of the people who had brought justice for her family. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity would forgive many things, but the murder of children was not among them. And when humans sought justice, they would find it, no matter how far they had to travel or how powerful their enemies believed themselves to be. The age of casual violence against human colonies was over. Earth had made sure of that.